Jeff Kinney. We're at the Los Angeles Times Festival of Books. It is an honor to have you here with us. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be back.
Yeah. I'm holding the Diary of a Wimpy Kid, The Long Haul, in my hands, but there's bigger news because there's a new Diary of a Wimpy Kid, number 10.
That's right.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's coming November 3rd. You can't tell us probably anything about it, but we'd love to dig as much as we can out of you.
Okay, great. Yeah, it's actually going to be about fathers and sons. You know, I'm thinking about myself as a father right now. I've got two boys, 9 and 12. And I think, you know, are these kids really prepared for the world? You know, sometimes they'll like buy a bottle of water and then just hand it to me like this, you know, it's like, open this, Dad. And I'm like, if you were on an island, you know, full of bottled water, like you would die of thirst because you could not open a bottle of water. And I'm thinking, how far can you take that? You know, I'm thinking about having Greg Heffley's dad really worried that his sons aren't prepared for the world, and that's what the theme is going to be.
It's funny because I read somewhere that you were looking to reset the series, and I wanted to know what that meant. But now it seems like you're going to tell it from a slightly different perspective.
Well, it's the 10th book, and I realize everything's kind of going back to basics in a way. Is that Greg's entering a new first day of middle school again, and I thought it was a good time to kind of, you know, look at what's happened with Diary of a Wimpy Kid and kind of set it aside and imagine that this is the first book I'm writing.
Yeah, that's great. I remember when we first talked to you years ago, it was the second or third book, and we asked, how many do you think? And you had no idea at that time, but I know that you had talked about finding the right time and the right place. This sounds like a perfect solution to sort of reset it, try something different, open up a whole new pathway for you.
Yeah, what I've really realized about the books, I think it happened around book 5, is that I realized that these are comics, that the DNA of the series is in comics and comic strips, really. And the best cartoon characters don't age, they go on forever. You know, Bart Simpson has a first day of 5th grade every year for 20 years. And there's something about the suspension of disbelief that comes with comics that allows you to just keep writing, and I'm just going to keep writing with Greg Heffley.
He never has to grow up.
Right. He's stuck in pre-adolescent amber forever.
That's where we want him.
Right.
Yeah. You talked earlier about, while we were off camera, about a world tour coming up. And this sounds like something bigger than you've ever done before for Wimpy Kid. Tell us about that.
One of the biggest surprises for me about Diary of a Wimpy Kid is that it's successful in all these different countries where the culture isn't the same, the language isn't the same. You know, one of the biggest followings for Diary of a Wimpy Kid is in Brazil, for example. I went there and I was shocked. You know, there were like 3,000 people came out to a book signing in a mall. And so what we're going to do this time around is we're really going to get all over the place. You know, we're going to as many countries as we can in about a month and a half. And you know, I think we're starting in Australia and going all around the world to all these places I've never been. So it's going to be really exciting and daring, and I'm not sure if there's really a model for it. So I hope I survive it.
Do you have to do anything with those foreign editions of the book that, like, because obviously there's cultural differences and there's language differences. What do you have to do as the author to make sure that they translate the right way?
You know, it's funny, there's this kind of leap of faith where I write the book and send it out into the world, and then it comes back in Japanese, and it's like, I don't know what it says. They could have changed every word. So there is that leap of faith. But I think sometimes when I talk to the translators, I get some insight into what happens, and some things don't translate at all. And then some things are very familiar to the kids, because really the books are the fabric of childhood, and childhood is really universal.
Right before we went on camera to start this interview, a young kid came up with his mom and got to meet you. And you know, there was probably a time when people didn't know who you were, and you probably remember those days, but now you're Jeff Kinney. You're the Diary of a Wimpy Kid. You're the man who makes these things, and there's like an excitement, a genuine excitement. Every day, I'm sure your kids look at you and don't see that,
Right.
but the kids who see you in the street who've grown up with these books now do. How has that changed over the years for you?
In a way, it resets every year. And right now I'm in this really dark place because I'm writing a new book. I don't feel like I'm going to be able to come up with enough jokes for the book. And I feel, you know, I live in a very small town in Massachusetts of about 8,000 people. So I feel like if I step out into a stage here and people show up, I'll be astounded. Yeah. You know, I said to Jason, my publicist, I said, you know, I saw a kid walking by with a Wimpy Kid book, and I was like, I'm relevant for one more year. You know, as long as that kid's carrying that book, I'm okay.
What does it feel like when you see somebody carrying your book and they don't know it's you necessarily? Sometimes they do, but other times they may not know that you're Jeff Kinney who's making them laugh in these books. do you want to say, hey, that's me? Or what does it feel like when you see that?
I think that's something about being an author. It's very particular to being an author, is that even if you are a famous author, quote unquote, you're not really that famous. Nobody knows what you look like. And so my normal life is just very, very normal. And people in my town don't care that I wrote the Diary of a Wimpy Kid book. So,
right.
But it's good because then you can flip a switch and step out on the stage and transform yourself. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Let's talk about your town for a sec, because you are opening a bookstore.
I am.
This is a big deal. It's a different kind of bookstore too. It's seems like you got multimedia stuff happening in there, and you're thinking about it a little bit differently. But what prompted you to move into book selling?
In my town, there was an old market called Falk's Market, which was really decrepit. It used to be the nerve center of the town. It had been there since the 1850s, and it fell apart. And the owners moved on. And what ended up happening was it just sat there for about 17 years. And then my wife and I bought it. We had to tear it down. There was no other choice. And then we decided to build something in its place that was really nice, using recycled materials and environmentally conscious. So it's really a special building in its own right. And then we're going to put a bookstore into it. So we're hoping that we can replicate that nerve center feeling of the town with a bookstore instead of a general store.
I love it.
Thanks.
When are you going to be opening?
In about a month, we're opening. Yeah.
And so, will you be in the store? Will you be working there?
I will.
I'll
be shelving
after the world
books.
tour.
Yeah. I always wanted to. My wife always laughs. I always wanted to be a Domino's pizza guy. I applied for the job and didn't get the job when I was a teenager, and that's always burned me, And so I always keep telling her, I'm going to work at Domino's, as an adult. Right now, I'm going to work at Domino's, and I think this is the closest thing. I'm going to work in the cafe and shelf books in the bookstore, and so I'll get that taste of retail.
Mark. We can get that check mark on the Domino's thing, too.
Yeah, I think so. I'm excited.
We'll figure it out. We're glad to have you here, Jeff Kinney, Los Angeles Times Festival of Books, the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series. You've made a lot of kids very happy for a long time. Looking forward to the next one, too.
I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Great to see you again. Thanks.
You too.